Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm wondering in the presentation on social change, I'm wondering if there was no mention of unionization, and I don't know a lot about this sort of history of the region, but can you speak to where that is in these areas?
You mean unionization in
Workforce, yeah.
in the countries?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, because of the Soviet Union, that unions were very big. But there was an initial period where they were all deconstructed, and since then, at least I know, in all three countries in the region, there are no unions. There are attempts. There are attempts to unionize this, and but it's being resisted by the government. It requires money. It requires joint action, and I think one of the other things about the countries in the people, the culture, especially in the last 10 years, is that there is no culture of communal or collective work, or collective bargaining, or collective action. So it's usually, and especially when we're talking about this activism in civil society, they're among the younger people, whereas unionization would require in the older demographic, or the older demographic, which are not very interested in that.
There's a question for Mr. Kochikian, and it relates to Azerbaijan. I lived in Baku for a while at a time when we were trying to promote a more free and independent media press, and I wonder how you found the state of free expression in Azerbaijan today. And secondarily, you come from an Armenian background, and I wonder how you were received by the Azeris. And I could tell you more about that little conflict if you want.
Yeah. The second question, overall, it was positive, but let's talk about it during the reception so that we will save time. But in terms of free expression, I think it's not that when you're in a public setting, you're talking, you say, you cannot talk about politics, the regime is doing this, or you cannot say that. You can. But when it comes to free expression at a mass level, mass media level, that's where it starts hitting. I think the government, the regime knows that people talk about it, that they criticize them, but in circles and in private settings, family gathering and so on, perhaps, or friends. But the main problem of free expression is at the level of blogging or Facebook or even, protests and gatherings. I think that is the major problem.
I have a question for Professor George concerning the minorities policies. Do you know if any of those countries, in Georgian case, of course, do they practice reserved seats for ethnic minorities, or do they have party quotas? Any of them?
There are no reserved seats, and not only that, it's for parties to register for an election, they have to have a national constituency. And because the communities, the Armenian communities and these area communities are so concentrated in those particular districts, that means that neither of those groups can functionally build any kind of ethnic party. So the Georgian system essentially outlaws ethnic policy or ethnic political parties just by virtue of the fact that they require a national level constituency. Now, some parties in Georgia have kind of cooperated with the ethnic minority communities and some groups inside the ethnic minority communities, but some parties are open to communicate to those sorts of collaborations, and then other parties are not. And I can tell you which parties are which, but like outside of so the United National Movement was the party that really kind of put in for ethnic minority representation in their ideology and have pursued it. The other parties that have pursued, like put ethnic minorities on their lists or run ethnic minority majoritarian candidates for the Republican Party prior to the Georgian Dream. And now many of the Armenians that are leaving the United National Movement are joining the Republican Party and not the Georgian Dream Party, which is an interesting move. And there's also the industry, the party Industry Will Save Georgia, which is a very tiny on-again, off-again party. And they're actually the only ones outside of the ruling parties that consistently collaborate with ethnic minority groups.
Sort of like the electoral.
All right, we encourage you all to continue the dialogue with the speakers at the reception, but thank you all for coming, and let's have another
I think
conversation.
there's like, I know that